Tina, thank you for joining us here on New Mexico in Focus.
Absolutely, Russell. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
The new movie, Oppenheimer, was just released. You saw the film. What was your reaction to that?
Well, my first reaction is I wish they would have focused a little more on the people in New Mexico who were literally participants in the test at Trinity. But it's not just that. I mean, let's be real here. Without the people of New Mexico, we would have had no Manhattan Project and no Trinity test, because as a matter of fact, it was the people of New Mexico who, number one, mined the uranium. No fission without uranium, right? So we never really spend enough time reflecting on the fact that New Mexico, through the Navajo Nation, Laguna, and Acoma Pueblo, we have over 1,000 abandoned uranium mine and mill sites. They extracted 32 million tons of uranium in that process. They used people's poverty against them and the promise of a better life, and they sent them into those mines without adequate safety gear, and they've been dying ever since. So there's that. And then there's the fact that, they bussed the Hispanic and Native women up to Los Alamos, and they're the ones that cooked every meal, cleaned the houses, changed every diaper, and their husbands were bussed up there as well. They're the ones that built the roads and the bridges and the facilities and served as janitors, cleaning the radioactive waste off of the instrumentation. Some of these men lost their lives in explosive accidents. So we have all that, and they'll never, reflect on the fact that people lived as close as 12 miles to the Trinity test. So for me, filming of the Oppenheimer movie in New Mexico, coming here and taking advantage of our tax incentives, over glorifying the science and the scientists and not reflecting on the part that the people of New Mexico played in this project, is a huge error on their part and a huge omission of the entire history. And it's basically just a perpetuation of the lie that's always been told. And so I was disappointed in that regard.
Take me back to, for people who don't know, to the Trinity test. Your family lived near where the bomb was detonated and where this test took place. What were the effects long-term of that test on your family and yourself?
Well, to answer that question, let me also remind everybody that if you draw a radius around Trinity at 50 miles, we happen to know, because we've done the research, that there were 15,000 children, women, and men living adjacent to the Trinity test site. That's far too many people living far too close to a nuclear test site. So what has happened since then? Well, we were highly overexposed to radiation, and some new mapping was released last Friday. There was an article in the New York Times about this. A young scientist from Princeton recreated the test and the fallout deposition based on today's technology. And what we know now, that in those first 10 days after Trinity, there was a large deposition of radiation all over New Mexico. Some areas received really high levels. That actually translates into negative health effects. We all know that radiation exposure is very dangerous to human health. And so in my family, I'm the fourth generation to have cancer since Trinity. I wasn't alive at the time of Trinity. My exposure may have not come from Trinity. It may be from the Nevada test site, which we know we were also downwind of. But regardless, this has become a multi-generational problem. I'm the fourth generation in my family to have cancer since 1945. I had two great-grandfathers alive at the time who died in 1955 from what was described as stomach cancer. We'll never fully know because there was no treatment. They gave them morphine, sent them home to die. Both my grandmothers had cancer. My dad died from cancer after having two very distinctly different oral cancers that he didn't have risk factors for. He didn't drink excessively, didn't smoke, didn't use chewing tobacco, had no viruses. He developed two primary oral cancers. I had thyroid cancer. The first question they asked me was, when were you exposed to radiation? The very sad thing is, in my family now, we know who the fifth generation is. I have a 23-year-old niece studying art at college in California who has had her life upended because she's been diagnosed with thyroid cancer as well. And I wish I could say that this is unique to my family. It's not.
Has there been any government acknowledgement about this?
There's never been any government acknowledgement. The government's never come back to basically take a full view look at this either. Long ago, We should have had an epidemiological study taking place here where they literally went into these villages and accounted for everybody that was there and also tracked what happened to them. But none of that has ever happened here. We've never had any study that actually addresses the health effects. Now, there have been studies, like a CDC study, that said, as the part in the CDC study, La Hadra, Los Alamos Historical Document Retrieval and Assessment, literally the chapter 10 that's devoted to Trinity says that they believe that in parts of New Mexico, the exposure to human beings could have been as much as 10,000 times what is considered acceptable today. So it's no wonder we have 4 and 5 generations of people with cancer in New Mexico. We document families like that all the time. It's not unusual.
And in the movie, the lead up to that Trinity test is a major point in that movie. What was your reaction when this bomb was, they film it in a great camera angle, a lot of suspense. But what was your reaction when it went off, when you were watching this, and then the immediate aftermath and how it was portrayed?
Well, I had a lot of anxiety in advance of watching the movie, and I knew that it was going to be very difficult to watch. I also knew that probably being present in this movie would bring me as close to the actual events as I'd ever be after hearing hundreds of stories from people. And, I was very emotional. The whole thing was very emotional for me. I only thought about the stories that people told me, the times that people told me we thought it was the end of the world. My mother gathered us up in bed and we started praying the rosary in Spanish. My mother pulled the car over on the side of the road and she made us kneel on the side of the road and we started praying the rosary. That theme runs through all these histories, that they thought it was the end of the world. And you can imagine it was so massive, so enormous, that of course people thought it was the end of the world. And I have a friend, Paul Pino, who does this work for me, and he always says, can you imagine what people thought when they thought the sun was rising in the west instead of the east? They would think it was the end of the world. For me, it was very emotional to watch, and I was just, as I said already, so disappointed that they had no reflection on the people that lived adjacent to the Trinity site, the thousands of people that lived in those communities, 20 and 30 and 40 miles away, like my community, Tularosa.
As the movie went on and the biopic showed basically the challenges that Oppenheimer would face afterwards, realizing what he unleashed, did you feel any sympathy for the character of Oppenheimer when he was expressing regret about what this bomb could do? Not what it has done, but what it could do.
I understand that he had regrets, but for me, there was that moment in the film where they show his wife hanging out the bed sheets, and she appears to be in Los Alamos. They present it as though she's in Los Alamos. And all I could think of was, the truth is she wasn't in Los Alamos. He sent his family away to safety while he allowed us all to remain in danger here. And so it's really difficult for me to give him a pass card or to feel any kind of empathy towards him. And I will say he had every opportunity to bring to the attention of people the idea that maybe somebody here was damaged or harmed. And I've never read any place in the history books where actually he ever reflected on that, took a moment to bring that to anyone's attention. And they full well knew ahead of time that that bomb was going to create massive fallout. I don't think they realized how enormous it would be, but they knew that fallout was going to be a byproduct of the test. And they moved ahead with it anyway. And so it's really difficult for me to have empathy towards people who just didn't see us. They didn't see us then, and obviously the filmmakers don't see us today.
Last time you were on the show, since then, Henry Herrera, who is believed to be the last known witness to the Trinity test, he saw it when he was 11, has died. He died at 87 after suffering years of mouth cancer and a reconstructed jaw. What did he teach you when you got involved in this movement about what was at stake and how people were affected?
Henry is a true hero in the eyes of a lot of us. I view Henry that way because he consistently told his truth year after year after year, as sick as he was for all those years. And even at times when people tried to discount his truth, he told his truth with pure dedication to that truth. And so it's been very hard for our community of Tularosa to suffer through the loss of Henry, but so many people. I mean, we light luminarias in July in memory of people we've lost, and we have well over 800 names, and it's just through a voluntary process. And Henry is one of those now. And I think the one thing I always remember about Henry when I think about him, other than his amazing account of that day, is that he and his wife made a list for me one time of the people that they knew in Tularosa who had died from cancer. And the list was close to 500 names, and Henry told me, I played the guitar at almost every one of those funerals. And I thought, imagine, even through his own suffering and through his own health challenges, he showed up for his community that way. And he's a hero. He's, you know, I always say a lot of great men lived besides Robert Oppenheimer. And Robert Oppenheimer was an incredibly flawed man. And Henry told me once, Tina, we didn't have much, but we had everything we needed. We had running water, we had fertile soil, and we took care of each other. And he said, and it was all destroyed after that bomb. And I think about Henry and how he is absolutely 180-degree difference from Robert Oppenheimer. But Henry was still a great man, and you'll never see a movie about his life. And that to me is very disappointing. We have never been given the recognition that we should have been given.